There's a few teachings from Ajahn Chah about meditation. Suppose that your mind exists within a crystal dome that allows some sense objects to enter but provides fixed limits. The mind doesn't run after mental states. It has a certain anchor. This is called Upajjhara Samadhi. After the mind has dwelt in complete calm for a sufficient time, it withdraws to Upajjhara Samadhi, where it contemplates external expressions in order to give rise to wisdom. This process is a little hard to grasp because it looks so similar to mental proliferation, and when thoughts arise, you may think that your mind is no longer calm. In fact, the thoughts and perceptions that occur at this time arise within the calm. Investigation that takes place within the calm does not disturb it. Sometimes the body may be taken up for investigation. That doesn't mean you start thinking or speculating. It occurs spontaneously. There is awareness within the calm, calm within awareness. If it was merely mental proliferation, it would not be calm. It would be disturbing. This isn't proliferation. It is a feeling arising from calm, and it is called investigation. Wisdom arises right here. It's a question. Would it be right to say that momentary samadhi or khanika samadhi is sufficient, that it's not necessary to go any further? Well, that's not completely wrong. What I mean is that you have to walk all the way to Bangkok until you know what Bangkok is like. Don't just go as far as Korat. Even if you're going to go and live in Korat, go on to Bangkok. Then you'll see just how developed Korat is. Go all the way to Bangkok, and then you'll go through Ubon, Korat, and Bangkok. So with samadhi. If your mind will go all the way, then let it, so that it can know the whole samadhi lineage. Neighborhood samadhi, Upajjhara Samadhi, is the same as only going as far as Korat. Question. So Appana Samadhi is further, is beyond Upajjhara Samadhi. Yes, Upajjhara only goes as far as Korat, but it travels around. Khanika Samadhi runs in. Upajjhara doesn't run in, it walks to and fro. At the moment when the mind is thinking, but within the peace. Sometimes while it's thinking, it stops at one point and enters into Appana Samadhi. At that moment it abandons Khanika and Upajjhara, it abandons everything and goes way inside where it's freed from all things. But it is the result of momentary and access concentration. You have to pass through them first, otherwise you won't reach right way over there. Question. How do you know which level you've reached? Whatever level it is, it's enough to have the clear awareness in your mind that the mind is calm. Let it see clearly that the mind is truly stopped. Are you firmly confident that your mind is clear and radiant? You have to be your own guarantor. With just this much, you don't have to worry about whether it's Appana or Khanika or whatever. Don't bother with all of that. It's a waste of time. It's better just to take your mind, your own truth. As long as you're unable to do something, then you have to keep at it. As long as you don't yet see, then you have to keep training yourself. Samatha means peace, tranquility, serenity. Vipassana, clear seeing, insight, is a synonym for wisdom. These two terms are found in Buddhist meditation texts and become subject of some controversy. Disagreements tend to center on the question as to the relationship between them, most particularly as to the extent to which samatha has to be developed before vipassana can occur. Some teachers stress samatha and others vipassana. Ajahn Chah largely avoided this debate by refusing to make a hard and fast distinction between them or to give either one precedence. He was more concerned to point out the relationship between them and their connections with other qualities. He says, he usually calls samatha samadhi and vipassana wisdom. So he says samadhi and wisdom have to go hand in hand. The terms calmed mind and calmed defilements were Ajahn Chah's own creation, and he was fond of using them in the place of samatha and vipassana. So he says in samatha the sangop jit, and vipassana is sangop gilet. These are two terms he used. Speaking of samatha, it is what is called the pacification of the mind. When you practice meditation, then you pacify the mind. But its life is short. That's where there's disease. It can't withstand a lot of things going on. So you have to go to a quiet place and pacify your mind. But the defilements are still there. They haven't been pacified. This is where the distinction can be made. The pacification of the mind and the pacification of defilements are two different things. With the peace of mind, when you don't hear any raucous sounds, the mind can become peaceful easily. But if there's some kind of threat, then it can't. There's something still there. You can't let go. You can't put it down. So there's a convention of samatha and vipassana. If you want to treat them separately, you can. But if you treat them together, or look at them together, then they're inseparable. They're connected. A layperson once came and asked me if these days I taught people to practice samatha or vipassana. I said I don't know. They're trained together. If you answer in terms of what actually happens in the mind, then you have to answer like that. Develop them simultaneously, because they're synonyms. If you develop concentration, but lack wisdom, it won't last long. Wisdom is the movement of samadhi. It's like the phrase, still flowing water. Samatha and vipassana of someone with right practice must be in harmony and concord and flow like a stream of water. The mind of the practitioner is like still flowing water. If you compare it with Dhamma, then samadhi is the peace that in the samadhi where the peace incorporates wisdom, has sila, samadhi and panya. Wherever you sit, it is still, and yet it flows. It is still flowing water. There is samadhi and panya, samatha and vipassana. The mind which is sufficiently imbued with peace, free from the hindrances, in the state called kamaniyo, or the workable state, Ajahn Chah would usually suggest taking up mindfulness of the body as the object of investigation, using the 32 parts of the body, or else the first 5, head hair, body hair, nails, teeth and skin, or whichever part suits one. And he says, it's not necessary to visualize a lot of things. We just visualize things that will give rise to wisdom. We need to look from the head right down to the soles of the feet, from the soles of the feet up to the head. What is this? How real is it? Why do people attach to it so tenaciously? Why are we so concerned about it? What's the reason? What does this body consist of? We investigate all these things until we see them according to truth as just this much. As soon as you see that, understand that, then attachment withdraws. That grasping onto things as, oh, I love this so much, or I hate that so much, recedes. No matter how much calm, samadhi, his disciples had developed in their meditation, Ajahn Chah still taught them to hold on to mindfulness and self-awareness within that peace as the most important virtue to be cultivated. A common question for meditators who have developed strong concentration is what they should do next. Ajahn Chah said, look after what you've already developed and intensify your mindfulness. If you give more importance to mindfulness than to anything else, then you won't go wrong. It is the correct way to put forth effort. If your mindfulness is still not fully matured, you must try to increase it so that you have the measure of everything that occurs in your mind. Whenever mindfulness becomes clear and bright, then knowledge will arise, because wisdom depends on this awareness of whatever passes through your mind. So that's it. If you have mindfulness, it will give birth to wisdom, and you'll clearly see and understand. If you've no mindfulness, then you don't know where your mind has got to. Develop as much mindfulness as you can. it is of immense value in upholding your awareness and putting it on the path of peace. Mindfulness is the Buddha himself, in that it helps to support and caution us. We become Buddha-like when we have mindfulness, because the mind is awake, it knows, it sees, and it is restrained. Restraint and composure arise through mindfulness. Wherever defilements still lurk unseen, it's because the imperfection of mindfulness allows them to evade you. But whenever mindfulness becomes clear, then the mind, or your wisdom, becomes radiant. So don't give things any particular significance. Don't attach to ideas of self and other. Just keep putting forth effort. My advice is simply to carry on like that, and as long as nothing comes up, then don't investigate anything. Carry on normally, as if you're walking along a road or sweeping. When you're sweeping your house, you keep going without looking around at anything else. It's only if someone calls your name, and you know that there's some business to be seen to, that you look up. Otherwise, you just carry on with your sweeping. Similarly, in meditation, only when something comes up should you investigate. Otherwise, merely contemplate your present experience. Simply maintain the mindfulness to be aware of that. If nothing comes up, then rest at ease. But that doesn't mean just letting things go their way and ignoring them. There is care and attention. You're aware of whatever passes through the mind. But you don't need a lot of thinking and investigating. But when something impinges at one of the sense doors, and it in turn impinges on the mind, then keep watch on it. If you don't lose sight of it, you'll see it as just that much, and then you can return to where you were. Don't run away from that place, because if you do, before long, you'll find yourself carried off to heaven and hell. Be careful. There's some more teachings on answering questions on the difference between thinking and investigation. Thought is one thing and investigation another. With thinking, the mind is one is in a coarse state. It's just wandering without control. As soon as the mind becomes calm, a certain kind of awareness arises, which is very similar to thinking, but is not thinking. It is a weak form of wisdom that arises from the calm, in which ordinary thinking has already been filtered out. If you don't know it for what it is, it will turn into conceptual thought. If you know it for what it is, it will turn into wisdom. That is, it will look on anything that arises as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and impersonal. Proliferating about this and that is conceptual thought, and the knowledge that arises will be rooted in ignorance. The result of the knowledge of the way things are, vicca, is letting go. Seeing things as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and impersonal, you keep letting them go, and that is wisdom. Subsequently, it will become vipassana. The process has already begun. Question. While we're sitting, how do we distinguish between true wisdom and ignorance? If it's really wisdom, then you don't attach to its object. You're not irritated by the object. You see it as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and impersonal as a natural phenomenon. When defilement arises, it is touched by wisdom and disappears. If it's touched by ignorance, then you grasp onto it. There are two paths of meditation. The Buddha called the first liberation through concentration, or jeta vimutti, and the second, which is very quick, a liberation through wisdom, or panya vimutti. It's like two people looking at a design together for a few minutes. One of them understands the pattern straight away and can go away and reproduce it. This is panya vimutti. The other person, the jeta vimutti, has to sit and ponder about the details of the pattern and go back for further checks. So with jeta vimutti then, you have to work with the mind a fair amount. You have to develop quite a lot of concentration. This first person doesn't need to do all that. He looks at the design, understands the principle, and then goes off and draws it himself. He has no doubts. Both paths reach the goal, but they have different characteristics. Panya vimutti is constantly surrounded by mindfulness and clear comprehension. When anything emerges in the mind, then it knows it and can let it go with ease. The Jeta Vimutti person can't see things as they emerge in that way. He has to investigate them, which is also a valid path. Know your own character. In the first place, some people may not realize that there is samadhi present. You walk along looking, and samadhi, meaning firm stability of mind, is inherently present. For someone with wisdom, it's not difficult. He just develops enough samadhi to create a foundation. It's like students reaching grade 12 at school. Now they can choose which subject they want to specialize in. Whoever wants to go on to study agriculture does that, and so on. It's the point of separation. Samadhi is the same. It reaches its destination in the same way. On another occasion, Ajahn Chah talking about vipassana, it is this discernment which emerges from the calm that is called wisdom, or clear seeing, vipassana. And simply be aware of the good as good and the bad as bad. Good and bad are conventional terms, and they are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self. They are subject to change, and not to be attached to. If you can keep recognizing sense objects as impermanent, unsatisfactory, and not self, then wisdom will naturally arise. Throw everything into those three pits. It is the essence of vipassana. Whatever it is, good or bad, throw it into the pits of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Before long, knowledge and vision, a weak form of wisdom, will arise regarding the three characteristics. That's what meditation is about. Try to keep doing this. Know the truth in order to abandon, to withdraw, for peace. When your ear hears a sound, watch your mind. Is it disturbed? Is it irritated? This much you know. You hear, but you're not irritated. Let's take what's close up, rather than what's far away, because you can't get away from that sound by any other means than this, by training the mind to be firm in this knowing, and by putting things down. You still hear the things that you have put down. It's not that you have to force a disjunction. Through the abandonment, the putting down of attachment, the mind and its object become automatically disjoined. Even if you wanted the mind to follow after the sound, it wouldn't. When you perceive forms, sounds, odours, flavours in their true light, you see them all without exception clearly in your mind as displaying the three characteristics of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. When you hear something and experience it in your mind as the universal characteristics, then whenever sense objects impinge on your mind and you hear as if you didn't hear, it's not that your mind has no work to do. It is closely and protecting each other all of the time. If you take your mind to this point, wherever you walk, the mind will be researching. This is the enlightenment factor called investigation of Dhamma. It rolls along, and you talk with yourself. You resolve and release the feelings, perceptions, sankharas and consciousness. Nothing can get close to the mind. It has its work to do. This is a matter of the spontaneity of the mind. It's not something that you can contrive. Look deeply. What is the present state of your mind? Simply stay with that awareness. If you keep that up, you will have a foundation. You will have mindfulness and clear comprehension, whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down. If you see anything coming up, then just let it be. Don't attach to it. Liking and disliking, pleasure and pain, doubts and faith are all just the mind commentating, reflecting on its experience. Examine its results. Don't go putting labels on things. Know what they are. See everything that arises in the mind as merely a feeling, something impermanent, that having arisen, persists for a while and then ceases. Things are merely processes. There's no self, no real separation between others and ourselves. There's nothing that should be clung to. When wisdom sees the body and mind as natural phenomena, then it sees the ancient insignia. It sees the impermanence of the mind, the impermanence of the body. It sees the impermanence of pleasure and pain, love and hate. It sees that nothing is lasting. An illumination takes place, and then disenchantment sets in. Disenchantment with this body and mind. Disenchantment with things that arise and pass away and are unstable. You feel it wherever you are. When the mind is disenchanted, its sole interest is in finding the way out of those things. It doesn't want to be like that. It doesn't want to exist in that way. It sees the suffering inherent in the world, the suffering inherent in life. When the mind has entered this state, then wherever you sit, there's nothing but impermanence, unsatisfactoriness and not self. There's nowhere to take hold of anything anymore. If you sit at the foot of a tree, you hear a discourse from the Buddha. If you go to a mountain, you hear a discourse from the Buddha. You see all trees as just one tree. You see all creatures as one species. You see that nothing deviates from this truth, that all things come into existence, persist for a while, start to change, and then cease. So you see this world more clearly. You see this mind and body more clearly in the light of impermanence, more clearly in the light of unsatisfactoriness, more clearly in the light of not self. If you attach to things as being permanent and real, you immediately begin to suffer. If you see mind and body as being natural phenomena, then you won't cling to them and you won't suffer. Wherever you go, you'll have wisdom. Even if you see a tree, wisdom will discern its nature. If you look at grass or an insect, wisdom will be present. Everything will converge at the one point of instability. This is the unchanging truth, the way things are. Where does permanence lie? It lies just in the fixity of things being that way. There's nothing more than that. With this vision, you reach the end of the path.